alaikum and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm starting my 24-hour paranormal romance readathon for this weekend. I thought it would be fun to try and walk you through what my TBR is a little bit, or at least the books that are on my radar for my TBR. There are 6 of them, so I don't think I'm going to get to all of them this weekend, but these are the 6 that I'm going to try and prioritize, at least to just get on there somewhere. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm starting my 24-hour paranormal romance readathon for this weekend. I thought it would be fun to try and walk you through what my TBR is a little bit, or at least the books that are on my radar for my TBR. There are 6 of them, so I don't think I'm going to get to all. I am starting a little bit late because my friend and I were hanging out today trying to do some party planning. So I'm going to try and start as soon as possible, which means this introduction is going to be as quick as I can make it as far as the books. So I'm not going to go into detail about what the books are about. I'm just going to show you what I'm reading, and then as I start, maybe I'll be able to take a few minutes to just kind of outline what the book seems to be about. So let's talk about the books really quickly. So first up, I'm going to try and read Night Embrace by Sherilyn Kenyon. This is book 2 in this series. I would like to continue my read of this series because it's a new series to me. I really like the first one. Looking forward to getting to read the second one. So can't wait to pick this up. Next up is Frost and Flame by Gina Showalter. I read the first one last year, I think, and really liked it. It was pretty much a Loki kind of inspired tale, but it wasn't exactly very Loki-ish. But the character had like some characteristics about it. This is picking up with one of the other side characters in that story, so I'm looking forward to reading this as well. Continuing with my Christine Feehan Leopards series reread, I'm going to be picking up Leopard's Prey. I don't think I mentioned finishing the one right before this in either of my blog or on here, but I did actually read it sometime this year, so I'm picking up this one to continue my reread. I know that the next one comes out in November. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish all of them until before then, but I do want to get back into rereading these. So this is also on my TBR. For another continuation of series, I'm going to be picking up A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair. I've heard some mixed reviews about this one as far as how it compares to the other books in the series, but I'm looking forward to getting back into the Hades and Persephone, more modern retelling, and seeing where it goes. Keeping up with the Hades and Persephone theme, which means one of them might not get read this weekend, is Promises and Pomegranates by Sal R. Miller. This is a book that I picked up in June or July. I think I did a book haul with it, and I picked up the 3 in the series that Barnes & Noble had. So I'm looking forward to reading this one and seeing how it takes the myth and seeing what direction it takes it in. So this I'm hoping to be a quick read. I don't know anything other than the fact that it's a Hades and Persephone retelling, so I'm looking forward to picking this one up as well. And finally, I have War by Laura Thalassa. This I think is actually not the first book in this series, but it's the only one that I really wanted to read. It's the only one that seemed really interesting to me at the time that I picked it up. So I'm going to give it a try and see if I like it. She's a new author to me, so I want to see if I like this one, then maybe I'll pick up the other ones that are in the series. And now that I'm starting significantly later than I planned, I'm going to go read. I might catch up with you a little bit later this evening and just to check in on my progress. But I don't necessarily know how much filming I'll do, just because tonight is kind of like the start of it, and I'm probably not going to be out and about. And I'll probably be hanging out in my room and getting comfy and cozy with some coffee or some tea, and then diving into the books. So I will hopefully check in with you a little bit later and maybe let you know which one I'm picking up. I'm currently waiting for my dinner to cook. I just started cooking some chicken. So while that is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and start reading. I did decide to go ahead and pick up a reread, which is Christine Feehan's Leopard's Prey. And that's just because I know that sometimes it takes me a little bit to get into paranormal romances, especially with authors I'm not familiar with. So to kind of kick us off, I'd rather start with a book that I know that I'm going to enjoy and can probably finish really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and I will keep you posted on my progress. It's now the morning, so good morning and happy Sunday, everyone. I've got my coffee in my Beauty and the Beast mug, and my next book, which is Promises and Pomegranates by Savar Miller, and I've got some leftover brownies from yesterday for breakfast. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Happy Sunday. This is the wrap up of my 24-hour readathon. I'm actually ending a couple hours early just because I only have 2 hours left and I really don't feel like starting another book. Plus, I really want to get into outlining because I'm trying to prep for NaNoWriMo. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a day here. I did finish 2 books that were on my TBR, and I'm going to walk you through what I thought about them. Even though one of them was a reread, I do want to kind of walk through what it was about and what I liked about it, and kind of go from there. So obviously the first book that I started with was Leopard's Prey by Christine Feehan. Christine Feehan is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, paranormal romance novelists. So I always recommend picking up her books if you haven't done so. The Leopard series is one of my favorite series by her. I think it actually is my favorite series by her. So I look forward to these books all the time. The next one I believe is coming out in November, so I'll leave the title and the date that it gets published somewhere down here, just so that you can be aware if it's something you're interested in. Leopard's Prey has to do with Remy and Bijou. Bijou comes back after a kind of touring as a rock star to New Orleans, and she is trying to kind of, wind down and find herself because she loves making music, but she also wants to kind of like have a settled down kind of approach. She had a bad experience with her dad. Her dad was also a famous person or a famous rock star. And she would rather, she realized she only followed the rock experience because that was kind of what was expected of her, but she loves making music and jazz and blues. So she comes home to kind of find that and kind of settle. Remy is a homicide detective, and he's also the brother of the female character in the previous book, so it kind of picks up from there, and that's how it's connected. At the very beginning, you learn about a murder that takes place, and it's related to a case 4 years prior. Essentially what ends up happening is that he and Bijou start hanging out more because she's being stalked as well as the murders are going on. So she ends up looking to him to kind of help her, and obviously things grow from there. What I love about this book is that it's not just the romance, it also has that kind of element of trying to solve the crime that he is trying to figure out, and it does get a little bit gory, so if gore is not your thing, I don't recommend reading it. If spice is not your thing, I also don't recommend reading it, because it does have some of those scenes in here. I do want to point out there are some trigger warnings for this book. Obviously murder, because it's about a murder. The murders are kind of gruesome, so just keep that in mind. There's drugs, there's some violence, there's child abuse, and that kind of thing tends to happen. If you're looking for more trigger warnings, I would definitely check them out before picking them up, or before picking this up. Obviously there's a stalker involved, so if that's something that might be triggering to you, I would be a little bit cautious about picking this one up. Despite all the trigger warnings and despite how gruesome the murder is, I actually do really enjoy this one. It knocks off all the things I like about my paranormal romance, getting the romance, but also getting a little bit of a more in-depth story that kind of shows you a little bit of growth from both of the characters, and then also just enjoying them growing as a couple. Like I said, one of my favorite series, so definitely recommend picking this up. This was a 5-star read for me, in case you couldn't guess by how much I was just gushing about it. So the second book you saw me pick up was Promises and Pomegranates by Sav R. Miller. And when I first told you about this book, I told you it was a Hades and Persephone retelling. But if you open the book and read the first disclosure page, it actually says that it is a very loose retelling of the Hades and Persephone myth, which I wish I would have read before picking it up and trying to tell you about it. Nonetheless, this book ended up being about 3 stars for me. It was interesting, but it took me a while to get into. I was very cautious about the fact that the main character is essentially an assassin, a contract killer for the mafia, and that is Cal. And the female character is Elena Ricci, who is the daughter of the person who employed Cal at the beginning of the book. So they're kind of blackmailed into getting married, which is how their kind of romance starts in the book, but they do have a little bit of a kind of backstory where they got together at Christmas at one point for one night, and basically Cal has been interested in her since then, and same thing for her, but they have to navigate their relationship and kind of the darker aspects of it. This is a very dark paranormal romance, so I would strongly suggest being very careful before picking it up. There are some very graphic scenes, both with murder and also the spicier scenes are very graphic. So I would definitely read the trigger warnings for this book on Miller's website, or the first page has several of them. Like I said, this was a 3-star read for me. It did not blow me away. It actually made me really confused at first. I couldn't really see any appeal to either of the characters at first. I did slowly start feeling more connected to them throughout the story. The writing isn't bad. I don't really like my romances in first person. It's something I mention a lot on my blog, but this does have the 2 perspectives, both told from first person, which gets a little too close for my comfort, but the writing itself was kind of beautiful. She had very beautiful quotations that I underlined or highlighted. But overall, the book was good and it has a satisfying ending. It just wasn't blow me away. So it's a good book. And if you're into dark romance, I would definitely say it's something you might want to pick up. But don't go in thinking you're going to get a Hades and Persephone, because while it has some elements that are brought in, she does say at the very beginning of the book that it is not it's not a strict adherence to it. So it has a little bit of Greek mythology interlaced in it. Some names get pulled, some nicknames get pulled from mythology, but other than that, it's more of a mafia romance. And that's what I would say about going into this book, being aware that that's what it is. And if you like darker romances, that's probably more your cup of tea. Not necessarily mine, but that's okay. All that being said, I'm probably still going to go ahead and pick up books 2 and 3 just because I want to see if maybe the writing changes or maybe my feelings change about the author. I do already own books 2 and 3, so I'm hoping that I end up liking them a little bit better. But now that I know what I'm walking into, I think that might make me a little less inclined to be a little bit off-put by the first chapter or so. I should say that I actually only read the disclosure after I read the first chapter, so I went a little bit out of order, so I probably should have started there and probably might have been a little bit more prepared for what I was reading. But other than that, like I said, it was relatively good. It's not blow me away, and it's not my favorite romance ever, but it was still a pretty decent book. Anyway, so that is my 24-hour readathon in a nutshell. I completed 2 books. I did end up sleeping because I realized I couldn't mess up my sleep schedule for this week. Work is going to be a little bit too busy. So I ended up stopping around 1 a.m. and picking it back up this morning at 9, and then I finished those 2 books. I do hope to get to some of the other romances on my list maybe later this month or even in November. November is obviously NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. So I don't know how much reading I'll get done, but let's hope that I can get back to my actual TBR for this month and then get some of those paranormal romances in. If you stuck around this long, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Bye!